Alright, legends, welcome back to another freaking video. Time-lapse art with me, your good old buddy Jay. And today, we're talking a little bit about grinding fundamentals and grinding in general for art. I think this is a topic that's been on my mind a lot. Because when you do any type of art, any type of anything, right, that has a high skill ceiling, you will run into, situations where you might want to get better, right? You hit a skill plateau where, whatever you're doing, you don't improve, right? You don't get the results that you want. So you need to pipe down and look at your work and reflect and think about, okay, what do I need to do to improve, right? And I think that level of self-reflection is very important when it comes to creating art. And so for the longest time, when I look at my stuff, the biggest thing that stood out to me tends to be my ability to paint. So that goes a little bit beyond just fundamentals already, right? Because when people talk about grinding fundamentals, what do they really mean by that? All right, so what they generally mean by fundamentals is the idea that when you draw something, you're not symbol drawing. The idea is that when you place a line and you try to create a shape, that shape is supposed to, as closely as possible, mimic how it would look in a 3D space, right? That's generally what people mean by when they mean, oh, you need to work on drawing stronger forms and fundamentals, right? Even without rendering, right? You can create an accurate form and it reads like it exists in 3D space. And I will agree that that is a very important thing to practice. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I will never say that that's wrong. I will never say that you don't need to understand form. But at some point, that's not the end all be all, right? And I think a lot of people, when they give critiques regarding going back to fundamentals and basics, right, they act like, oh, if you saw this, then you would be the perfect artist. Like, that's not the case at all, right? Because a lot of times, right, I'll do paintings and I ask for critiques, and people will be like, oh, you know what, I think you should work on your form first. It's like, okay, fair enough, but what if I want to fucking paint? What if I want to be a fucking painter? Am I supposed to just never ever paint unless I'm perfect at fucking drawing lines? So I think when you get advice from people about grinding fundamentals, you need to very critically think about it, because maybe strong fundamentals will not assist you in your art style and what you're trying to achieve with your art in general. Especially when you're in a position where you have to consider not doing what you want to do and instead replace that entirely with practicing fundamentals. Because, I go on Twitter, not Reddit, I go on Twitter. I don't know if I want to name any names right now, if I can even remember the names. There's a couple of artists that do these art styles, right? They're very stylized art styles that are rooted very loosely in fundamentals, right? Those artists drawing 30 hours of fucking life drawing every week, it's not really going to improve what they're doing compared to if they just did 30 hours of whatever the fuck they were already doing and posting it online, right? So, I look at some artists like, Akai Riot. That's a pretty popular one. That art style, not very fundamental based. It's a very basic kind of cartoony 2D art style. Generally not a whole lot of complex perspectives or form, right? So if you tell someone like that, hey, this stupid cartoon shit you're doing, I don't think you're very good at I think if I make you do a figure drawing, you wouldn't be able to do it to save your fucking life. So I think you should stop doing what you're doing and work on fundamentals, because you're a crap artist that can't do figure drawing. Now, does that make any fucking sense to say that to that artist? No. Why the hell are they gonna go back to fundamentals, quote unquote? Their art doesn't need it, right? Their art style is perfectly fucking appealing without strong fundamentals, right? They don't fucking need it. They don't need it. Would they be better artists if they did study fundamentals? Yeah, duh, fucking yeah, of course. But that's never ending. And that's the trap of fundamentals that sometimes you won't realize, is that the ceiling for it is literally unending, right? Another artist that I really like, back in the day, right? Zeronis, Paul Kwan. Right, an artist that used to work with Riot to do their concept art for League of Legends. Fucking great stuff. But if you look very, very closely, his fundamentals are actually not that strong. I'm gonna say not that strong because ultimately his fundamentals are still industry worthy, right? They're industry level. But still, it's on the slightly weaker side. If you look at the way he does poses and certain proportions and foreshortening and hands and stuff, you will see that he relies on a single pose, right? Fairly frequently. He's not an artist that does a lot of foreshortening and dynamic poses, right? If you look at his work, it's basically almost always kind of like a straight on pose. It's never anything crazy like a fucking leg in your face or like a foot in your face. It's never anything like that. It's a woman usually just standing in the complete upright position with a little bit of a bend, because it's also a stylistic thing, right? Because he draws those poses because he likes to show off the entire body of the female, right? And there's a obvious emphasis on on the legs of the female, right? To make them look more slender. So you need them in a fairly standard, generic standing position to get the whole length of the leg in there. Push the fact that, oh, you know, this is a fucking sexy woman with some long-ass fucking legs, right? There's only so many poses you can do to emphasize that. And it's just the safest route to just have her just do a regular standing pose. Because otherwise, you know, you don't get to actually see that much of the leg. And even if you do see the leg, right, maybe the length of it gets distracted by whatever pose she's doing. Sometimes great artists, very acclaimed artists, fall into, you know, these habits in their art where it kind of makes you question, like, okay, how good are they, you know, fundamentally? And if you look at some of his newer stuff, you know, they're a lot weaker in that regard. Maybe it's not so much that he's regressed, but maybe, you know, there's just a focus on other aspects of the work that sells it rather than just the fundamental proficiency, right? You can get by really far if you have a great style that people find appealing. And I think ultimately that matters a lot more than just being fundamentally sound. Now, of course, there's still, you know, up to a certain point where your proportions that are too fucked up, you know, if it's too fucked up and too distracting, you know, people will not like it. You know, it'll look like shit to a lot of people. But that's up to you to create that aesthetic. If you're able to kind of twist that to your advantage, where it's like, oh, you know, this proportional thing, this quote unquote lack of understanding of fundamentals. No, this is a stylistic thing. Don't you like the way this looks, right? So one of my favorite artists that kind of has this, I don't want to say problem, but it's kind of controversial for this, is Raita, right? If you don't know Raita, he did all the art for Valkyria Chronicles. You know, Selvaria? Yep, that's him. He made that. So the thing that I want to talk about regarding Raita is the fact that, you know, there's this meme where people call his characters banana tits, because the way he draws tits is that they're kind of like, they're weirdly shapen and they're usually elongated, right? And thus people say, oh, that's banana tits, right? Because those tits bend in a really strange way. But guess what? That's just kind of fucking hot. It's kind of weird, but it's also hot. So that's an example of someone who's you know, arguably their fundamentals bad because the proportions that they draw is fucking weird, right? There's a lot of these fucking anatomy people out there, man, that's just gonna fucking harp at whatever the fuck that they can find that they don't like, and they're gonna fucking talk about how shit you are as an artist because you got the anatomy wrong. No, they didn't get the fucking anatomy wrong. It's called stylization. There's a difference. You should understand that. And I think if someone harps on that point a little too much, you can tell they're complete amateurs. It becomes very obvious. It becomes very obvious when a person's an amateur kind of like art critic, when they talk about anatomy a little too much. Because at some point, right, anatomy doesn't matter a whole lot. I mean, yes, if your structure, your form is really fucking bad, then that's something you have to fix, definitely. But if you're one of those people that, you know, look at something like, if you look at Sakimi or Raita and you go, oh, you know, these people, they don't know how to fucking draw people. They don't know anatomy. Look at the size of her head compared to her fucking pelvis or blah 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 blah. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They don't know these basic ass fucking formulas that I learned. No, you're fucking wrong. I'm not saying that you can't, you know, you can definitely criticize their art style if you think that that's not appealing to you. But guess what? They made their career off of that. So, you know, what the fuck does your opinion mean? Right? There's clearly something working with their art style. They're clearly trying to achieve something with their exaggerations and with their quote-unquote anatomy inaccuracies. It's not mistakes. They're not accidentally making fucking banana tits. They're not accidentally making the fucking legs 7 heads tall. They're not accidentally doing it and making a quote-unquote mistake. It's an intentional design decision, and it's very important that people understand that when they critique art, right? Because it's just so amateur to look at any sort of, like, you know, proportions or whatever that's not you know, to look at these proportions that's not perfectly representative of what Lumi's taught you, right? The Lumi's kind of formula with the dude and the woman. It's a really funny fucking formula, by the way, because the woman is inherently in heels, so, you know, you can't just think about that like it's the fucking Bible. You need to be a little bit more flexible with the way you think about art, because anatomical formulas, they're not the end all be all of art quality. It's good to brush up on fundamentals. It's good to brush up on those formulas, but at some point you should stop talking about it like it's the fucking Bible, because it really isn't. It really isn't. People are allowed to deviate from it and have found great success doing it. You have to be able to discern what is a stylistic choice and what is a mistake. Hey, and that is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Very proud of myself for being able to pump out another video this quick. Hopefully I can do a weekly upload schedule. Well, until I run out of recordings anyways. But yeah, stick around. I got a couple more videos lined up that I gotta work on and post. But I got some pretty cool projects coming up. I'm actually working on a better live 2D model right now as we speak. You know, as I'm recording this, I'm actually drawing a different model, one that looks a little bit better. So, you know, stick around and wait for my quote-unquote fucking VTuber debut. Probably won't be doing that anytime soon. But yeah, really appreciate the views, and I'll see you next time.